All right, we're live on YouTube. Just gonna start sharing it a few places.
All right, fantastic. Should I get started then, Jay?
Yeah, we could just give it 5 more minutes.
Okay. Everybody can see my screen. Thanks, Shanice.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Awesome.
So Brad, we could start at like 6:05.
Fantastic.
Welcome everyone tuning in on YouTube. Everyone that's on the Zoom will be starting here in another minute. All right, I think we're good to get started. We can't hear you, Brian.
Thanks. Sorry, Jay. Just saying hi, everybody. My name is Brian Graves, and today we'll be covering the data analytics career roadmap here. So whether you're looking to just get into data analytics, looking to change careers, improve your skills to get a promotion, any of those kinds of things, the content that we'll cover today will absolutely apply to you. So welcome. Really quick one to cover off on exactly what we'll cover today. So number one, why data analytics is an awesome career choice. We'll also talk about each step of the data analytics career map and where you might find yourself on that today and how to kind of get to the next level. We'll uncover 4 must-have skills that every successful data analyst must possess. We'll also talk about how to boost your confidence and know when you're quote unquote ready to make the leap and get into the data analytics field. Also cover some and share some tips and tricks to nail your next data analytics job interview, and also talk about the number 1 best way to build your skills as a data analyst. So first off, I want to cover that data analytics is an awesome career choice. I absolutely believe that and have had a fantastic career in data analytics, which I'll get to in a second. But here are some of the reasons why I think it is such an awesome career. Number 1, it's got an amazing growth trajectory here. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics, they put together a lot of studies and refresh their data set and what kind of jobs are performing well and which are kind of flatlining out and kind of projecting out where the US is going to be. And they're anticipating a growth of 25% in the next decade. So that just means when you're picking data analytics as a career choice, you've got great job opportunity now and certainly into the future as well. The second fantastic thing about a data analytics career is it's got a high salary. So again, from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, folks that get into the data analytics and make that career choice, they earn significantly higher than salaries on average. And that's certainly been my experience in talking with others and my own personal kind of professional experience. Have found that the salaries there are fantastic and lots of room in there too. Entry level, high end, you can go into specialized fields and so on and so forth. So fantastic opportunity in terms of your salary as well. Finally, there's just endless options. Go take a peek over at Indeed if you haven't already, or LinkedIn, and you'll see lots of job opportunities for data analysts. And of course, you're not really boxed into a specific career path. Like say if you were in taxation or some finance field or something like that, like mortgages or something, you can do anything. You can bring it to any industry that you want. The skills are extremely transferable. So if you're interested in financial services, fantastic. Want to move into career, into like government or healthcare, those industries need data analysts as well. And certainly, every industry is out there. So whatever you're interested in, sports, whatever it might be, there is a data analytics career path for you in that industry. And that's a fantastic thing as well. So this is a recent article that came from Harvard Business Review. And quite a few years ago, there was this article that kind of made the rounds about data scientists being the sexiest job of the 21st century. So these two folks, they kind of looked at it to see, all right, how does that hold up? The article was actually about 10 years old. And so it's kind of timely. And I came across it while I was preparing this webinar and wanted to share with you guys. So this is all about data scientists, which is kind of closely related, which I'll talk about in a second, to data analysts. So most of the observations and the findings in this might apply, or they definitely apply, might be to a smaller scale, but still right up in there. And, the kind of gist of the article here is that, yes, still fantastic job, as I've kind of already mentioned, working in data. But there's still a lot of headaches to work through too. And so I don't know what sexy is, but in demand is good enough for me. And so, I'd highly encourage you to take a look at this article. And I did pull out one quote here. They're kind of findings that a lot of the same headaches still are out there. And so there's still lots of problems to solve in the data space. It's not, when you become a data scientist or a data analyst too, it's not a solved problem. And, there's still spending a lot of times doing data cleansing, data wrangling, these fundamental data analyst skills. And so there's still tons of opportunity out there. It's still just as fantastic of a career choice as it was 10 years ago. I want to cover off quickly on some of the kind of data role needs so you can understand where data analysts fit in the broader scheme of things at a typical company. So these are some of the roles that would make up a typical data team. So you've got your data architects, which are kind of responsible for designing and figuring out how the tables need to be data warehouses and tables need to be stored and things a lot of that nature to support the business. Then you have data engineers, which are responsible for moving the data from point A to point B, making sure that it lands where it needs to, with transformations applied and doing ETL jobs and things of that nature. Then you have data analysts, which are responsible for analyzing the data for sure, but a lot of the data prep and data cleansing and understanding how the data will be used and needs to be transformed. And finally have those data scientists, and which are really responsible for developing experiments and analyzing the results of those experiments to help the business move forward in that way. And so if you kind of think about this as like a funnel, or I don't know, a pyramid perhaps, and you can see here at the kind of top section, we have the data team, and down below the line, we've got the business team. And these sections of this pie, or of this kind of topped over pyramid cone, show the relative number of folks that you need. So in order to support data scientists, you really need a larger pool of data analysts. And in turn, you'll need a larger pool of data engineers and data architects. And so, these data scientists don't just work alone, they work with this team. And certainly that is true for data analysts as well. So while there may be, there's jobs all over the place, data analyst is the best role out of all four of these, or it's kind of exciting to me. And the reason is that because there really isn't a corresponding person or role on the business side, except for with the data analyst. So, a data scientist may work with a business leader, maybe work with somebody in strategy and planning, but there's not this, not somebody that understands the business to the same degree that the data scientist does, or something, something along those lines. Where data analysts, they have a corresponding business analyst, and very often those two roles are almost interchangeable and probably share 80% of the same kinds of job duties in their job. And that's why I think it's, of all of these different roles, it's the number one best role to be part of, because you have this direct line into the business, and this is how companies make their money. This is how they make really important decisions, long-term decisions, strategic decisions. Each of the other roles on the data side of things certainly plays a part in the success of the company from a data perspective, but there's something different about data analysts, because they've got their hands right in the mix. They have to understand the business to a deeper level, which is not true of the other roles here that are highlighted in blue. And so that's why I think being a data analyst and choosing that for your career is just, number one. All right, so let's get into the data analytics career roadmap here. The first step that we'll really talk about and dive into is all about skills. How can you develop your analytical skills and your experiences? Number two, we'll talk about confidence, and we'll bust some myths about becoming a data analyst. Number three, stop three here on this career roadmap, is all about the interview. How do you create a resume that stands out from the crowd? And finally, we'll talk about success, all about landing your next job or promotion in the data analytics industry. So before I get any further, I just wanted to quickly talk about myself here for a minute, introduce myself even more. My name is Brian Graves. So I've been working in data for 15 plus years, solving all sorts of business problems every single day with data, lots of different databases, lots of different technologies, everything from MySQL to SQL Server, Oracle, lots of different business intelligence tools like Tableau or MicroStrategy, all sorts of other tools. I've also worked with Alteryx, lots of data tools over the decade plus experience that I've got here. My current role is working as a strategic data analytics product manager, and I work in financial services industry up in Massachusetts, up in New England in the US. And it's currently like 97 degrees outside, extremely warm. And really, I love connecting with other people in their data journeys. There's a couple of screen grabs from some Zoom calls over the years. And I just love connecting with people in the data community and helping folks along in their data career journeys, wherever they may be, whether it's from freelancing to getting their career, like we're talking about today, talking about promotions, learning their skills, everything. I just love working on it all. So if you'd like to follow me, you can get me on Twitter over at New Prediction, and you can learn more about me at bgraves.com. I also have a bit of a portfolio out there and a resume to take a look at, which we'll talk about in a second, but gives you kind of a good idea on more details about me for sure and how to connect. And then I just really wanted to talk about my career journey and those 4 steps that that I mentioned earlier. And so again, talking about skills, confidence, interview, and success. And so for me, as I was getting kind of leading up and to become a data analyst, what really kicked everything off for me was learning those fundamentals of SQL. And what I mean by fundamentals of SQL would be things like certainly understanding the syntax, how tables work and how to connect to a database system, and how to select data out of there as you need to with joins or with a subquery, selecting specific columns. So all of that kind of syntax work, and also how the tables are joined together and how entity relationships work and those kinds of things, how to structure tables properly, what makes good table design, bad table design, all of those kinds of fundamentals of SQL. And along the way, I also ended up kind of specializing in financial data analysis. Nothing, I don't really have any background. My background is just in computer science, but really stuck with financial data stuff. I knew people that were in the financial services industry, so it was kind of a natural fit for me, or something I was interested in. The next step in my journey was all about building confidence, and I really did that through solving real world business problems and just gaining business experience and struggling to figure out how to make the SQL do what I needed it to do to answer the business question of the day or the week or the month. And along the way too, I expanded my expertise, or really, just further refined my expertise into sales and marketing data specifically, and really kind of found a niche for myself and found that I really enjoyed it. Took a while to get to land at my dream company, but I finally did. And so really spent a lot of time in the interview process, certainly practicing my skills. A big one there was really understanding what tools they used at this company, and working on those skills that way. As I was going through the interview process, I could speak to the tools that they were actually using, and the different database technologies and those SQL fundamentals, again, to kind of bring that into and demonstrate that I really knew what it is that they were looking for, and that I could provide that. And for sure, there was a mix of technical and business interviews. As I kind of talked about earlier, you really need to have the data analyst and business analyst work so closely together. You really have to understand from a business perspective what's happening there. And finally, kind of my own success story was I got hired as a data analyst, and that represented a 30% pay increase for me. So when I talked earlier about the job opportunities that are out there and those high salaries that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics found, I actually was a benefactor of those, and absolutely saw that for my family, and that was a fantastic experience for me as I got into the job that I wanted to, into the company that I wanted to, with the pay that I wanted at the time too. So if it worked for me, it can absolutely work for you, and excited to help you on that journey any way I can. All right, so we talked high level about the roadmap and each of the components that are in there. I shared a little bit about what my own personal journey was. So now I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each of those 4 stops along the way in your career journey, and talk about each one in turn. And so number 1, we'll cover off on the skills and what I would consider to be those must skills that every data analyst really must have. And so the first one here is all those database and SQL skills. I've talked quite a bit about this already, but you really have to have those fundamental database concepts, SQL syntax, how to work with joins, how to work with tables, so on and so forth. The next one is the business skills. You've heard me mention that quite a bit. Doesn't necessarily have to be exactly finance or financial services, but you need to understand what makes your particular business drive, or businesses in your industry, or the industry you're interested in, what makes them thrive? What makes them survive? What do they care about? So if it's nonprofits, it maybe isn't sales, but maybe it's grants or fundraising is what drives that business. If it's healthcare, it could be patient information or healthcare management or something along those lines. So you need to figure out whatever business skills means in your particular industry and how you can solve those with data. The next one is back kind of on the technical side, Excel skills. It's right up there. You really must have Excel, I'd say really high quality Excel skills for so many reasons. Number one, if you're working with coworkers and colleagues and fellow analysts, Excel is just how data is moved around. Send me that Excel spreadsheet, so on and so forth. The other area that it's just so useful, that's why it's kind of a must-have skill up here, is when you are going to send a report or you're going to send a bit of information over to your boss or a manager or a business partner, you got to put it into Excel, and 9 times out of 10, that's how they want to see it. So you really need to be comfortable and familiar with Excel, less so than the database and SQL skills, but still it's really high up there. And finally, the communication skills. This is kind of back on the business side of things again. And the task here and the point here is to uncover the so what. What's important about the data that I'm looking at here? How do I think through all of the data and all of the tables? And yeah, it's all technology stuff, but what's the actual kind of point about all this? And how can I start to answer questions that my business partners haven't even thought to ask? And when you can do that, you really prove your worth, and it feels like a real superpower when you can kind of almost predict the future for your boss or for your stakeholders. The next stop in the roadmap that we talked about was all about building your confidence, and just continuing on that theme there. The first one here, a fantastic way to boost your confidence is by busting these myths and these misconceptions and things that people think about SQL but aren't necessarily true to help you in your journey here. So the number one is that SQL is hard to learn. I've heard it out there. I think that it's certainly challenging, but by no means impossible. Lots and lots and lots of people learn SQL every single day, and there's some fantastic resources out there. One of which I'll share in a little bit. But don't believe the myth. Don't buy the myth that it's hard to learn. You absolutely can learn it. The second one here is that you have to know everything to get started. I have talked about kind of understanding the fundamentals of databases and kind of rattled off a handful of areas that I would consider to be fundamentals. But you absolutely do not need to know everything. So don't think that you need to be a SQL master in order to get started in your data analytics career. You just have to know enough to be able to solve business problems. That's it. That's all people really care about. And to get started, that's plenty. So, there's tons of things about SQL, and no single person knows everything. But I see a lot of people trying and don't feel 100% confident until they know everything, and it's this endless goal. Myth number 3 is that SQL is useful only for programmers and for real technology heavy people. And so I find that to be not true at all. Even if you are going to be using more drag and drop tools or a business intelligence tool or something like that, you absolutely have to understand how SQL works underneath the hood, what's going on with tables, what's going on with relationships, how to think about the data, and SQL is the absolute best way to do that. And it's a easy programming language to learn about. To learn, it's kind of when I mentioned myth number 1, and you absolutely have to know it. All data analysts need to know SQL for sure. The final myth is kind of a time-based one here, and a lot of people think and fear that they've missed the boat, that the jobs are over and done, and the job market is so saturated and it's impossible to compete with everybody, and SQL isn't really used anymore because there's better tools out there that are more drag and drop. You don't really need to know the coding anymore. There's tools that'll do it for you, and that's absolutely a myth. So the better you are at working through these myths and getting them behind you, the more confidence that you'll have and the further along you'll be on your career journey as a data analyst. The next stop here is all about nailing the job interview, whether or not you're in data analytics now or exploring getting into it or going for a promotion, looking for a job change. I've got a couple of tips here to help you out. So the first one is having a fantastic resume and CV. And when I say fantastic, I just mean it's certainly accurate and really is clear, concise, focuses on results. Has some bullet points on what it is that you accomplished in your time as a data analyst. If you're just getting started and don't really have a lot to put on your resume, very common problem. And the best tip I have there is to work through projects. And then, so it's not really an experience-based resume, but it's more of a project-based resume, which is still fantastic. And it really shows that you have got the chops and the skills. And so there's always ways to show what you know through your resume. The second one here is all about practicing. So as you're working to move into your next interview or into the interview cycle, you've got to have the practice there, if not every single day, certainly a couple times a week, several hours per week. That way, they say if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's absolutely true with SQL and with these fundamentals. You really need to keep these front of mind as you're working through the interviews, which could take several months, frankly. The next step here to help you with your next job interview is to participate in mock interviews. If you haven't already and you're in the kind of interview cycle, these are fantastic ways to figure out exactly what a real interview is like. And so you can interview with somebody like myself. I've done a good handful of these mock interviews, and it's always really beneficial to just understand what kind of questions come up from a technical perspective, business side of things. And those are really good to kind of work a lot of the nervousness out that you might feel with a real job interview. And finally, this is kind of encapsulates or kind of goes across everything. It's all about your mindset. If you're working hard, you're putting in the time, you've got a nice resume, you've worked through some of those SQL fundamentals, you've worked through all the myths there, and you've committed to becoming a data analyst, or worked through your practice stuff, you've done some mock interviews, keep that mindset positive. It will happen for you in an industry that you like, and a job that you can be proud of, working as a data analyst. So just keep working, and you will absolutely succeed, I believe. All right, moving on to success, the last step, the last stop in the roadmap here. And this is all about, hey, what happens when you actually get the job? So first off, take your time. It's okay to pause, to chill out for a few minutes here. It's a long journey, but it's worth it. You've landed the job that you're interested in, and now you have become a data analyst. So congratulations. Just take a second to pat yourself on the back there a little bit. However, don't take too much time. Absolutely need to take action and develop a game plan to be successful in your new role. So be working with your manager, be working with some peers, find a mentor to help you be successful. Those are all things that have worked for me. I'm a big fan of being kind of transparent and saying, I really need help in this specific area, whether it's kind of getting up to speed on business stuff, or I've never worked with a particular database technology. That's perfectly okay. There's people inside that are willing to help you out and help you be successful. And you just need to kind of take the initiative and take the action to get that done. The next one here is all about continuing to learn, kind of in parallel with the practicing. Once you land the job, do not stop your learning. Continue to sharpen your skills. This is a great opportunity to really focus in on things that are interesting to you. So if you happen to be in financial services, you can really drill into specific areas that are in there, or, whatever industry it might be, you can really start to focus in and work on things that are much more interesting to you. And finally here, once you have the job, you have got to focus on results. So if you're working to help your employer achieve the company goals, that's a fantastic thing. That's what you got hired to do, and that's what you want to do, and that's what the job is all about. But also keeping your eyes open. There's always opportunities out there, and if you do a fantastic job in the companies I've been in, anyways, results speak for themselves, and good hard work and results are usually met with more opportunities and more areas for growth and more room for growth. So in fact, definitely focus on that and focus on results for your employer. Okay, so that covers the roadmap really quickly here. Again, we talked about all the skills that you really need to be a data analyst, how to boost your confidence by busting myths. We talked all about the interview and how to do well in that whole realm as you're working through to get your first job or your next job. And then what success looks like. What happens when you do land your next job or promotion in data analytics. So before we, let's see, the last thing I wanted to just kind of cover on really quickly here before we move into the last few slides is really just kind of cover off on what it is that we talked about today. So as I mentioned earlier, we talked all about why data analytics is a fantastic career choice. We walked through each of the steps in the data analytics career map, roadmap. We talked through and uncovered those 4 must-have skills for every single successful data analyst. We talked about boosting your confidence and knowing when you're ready to take the plunge and get that data analytics job or the promotion. Talked about some tips and tricks to nail your next data analytics job interview and how to feel prepared for that. And finally, the number one way to build your skills as a data analyst, I believe, is really the last thing that I wanted to share with everybody today is actually a course that I put together and launched in the last couple of weeks. And this course here is called SQL for Beginners, and it's all about solving real-world business problems with SQL. So I've been talking the whole time here about being able to understand business problems and work through those and solve them with SQL. And this course represents, all of my kind of learnings and expertise along the way. And if you're just really getting started with SQL, it's a very business-oriented way of solving those problems. So as you can kind of see here, in-demand skill set, as we talked about, this course you can take it anytime on your own time, anywhere. It's all web-based. And we have a private students-only Facebook group as well to ask and answer questions and get help as if you get stuck. And so a couple of things here, just a little bit more details on the actual course itself is number one, this is all about solving real world business problems. This is done through some online training modules, and all the code is provided, all the kind of text. If you're more of a text-based learner or you want the videos, everything's there for you with those step-by-step instructions and code samples. There's 2 hours of video walkthroughs for the modules, and we also include 10 case study practice questions. So, kind of earlier I mentioned all about practicing and staying sharp for interviews, and even after you become a data analyst, these case study interviews are definitely business oriented. Things like sales reporting and supply chain reporting, those kinds of things, and this course takes you through everything you need to know from start to finish. You absolutely have access to our private community. It's a Facebook community, and just a couple of things here about our pricing options. So we have an annual package and monthly pricing options available, and all of the members or participants on this webinar here have an opportunity for 10% off the course for the annual package. And the coupon code there is webinar10. So go ahead and use that during checkout. And I have the URL up here on the screen. It's all about the data.co/SQL for beginners. And, we got folks in there now that are learning and advancing their own career and learning everything that they need to know about SQL and solving real world business problems. So that pretty much covers it for the content of the webinar, but absolutely want to open it up for any kind of questions, comments, anything that folks might be interested in learning more about, and happy to answer any questions that might be out there.
I do have a question. What is the pricing for the SQL course?
Yeah, fantastic question. So Yep, I can also share. Let me just share the URL here real quick. But the pricing is $249 for annual access, and then we also offer a monthly package, which I believe is $49.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Give me 1 second here.
We did have just 2 questions in the YouTube chat. From Elu says, when is that fine line of transitioning from taking courses to building a portfolio? Does it look bad for a data analyst not to learn Git/GitHub and just host a portfolio on a drag and drop website?
Yep, fantastic question. And I think the that portfolio technology, it does not matter. I don't think. You can have it even as a PDF, as kind of a Google Drive link or something like that, or a Dropbox link that folks can take a look at. I think you let your work speak for itself. And by the way, Git that's a tough technology to learn and to use. And so if you're just kind of getting started, that can be a real tough one to navigate and figure out exactly how to use it and what the best way is. So you certainly don't need to use Git to do that. But just my 2 cents on the portfolio, I absolutely have been in interviews where people bring up the portfolio, the fact that I have a portfolio, and that they're impressed by it, or, oh, cool, I saw they just kind of mention it. And so I've got to imagine that has helped me over the years that I've kind of built and fine-tuned that portfolio, and will sometimes even update it based on a job I'm going for or something like that. So absolutely one of those fantastic things to have under your belt. What else?
If anyone has questions, you can ask in the YouTube chat, or if you're on the Zoom, you can just ask in the Zoom.
I heard Sarah, but it was too faint. I couldn't quite make it out. I think it was Sarah.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, just barely.
Oh, okay. Actually, I'll type in the chat since I'm having some audio issues.
Okay, it's a little bit better now.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. I was just curious to know if there's any certifications that are required for data analysts.
Yeah, another great question. In my experience, there's none that would be required. I think the certifications, can go a long way. There's some really good ones that are out there. But I would not say that they're required. I don't have any specific certifications. I have like a business analyst certificate that was offered at a local college, kind of a thing. But I think that they're good. I know they're very popular these days, so that could be kind of changing and kind of shifting. But in my experience, definitely not required. But again, it kind of shows a strong signal that you're in the mix and really good. And also can be useful for building out projects, building out your portfolio, all with the practice and things like that. So definitely beneficial, but I would not say required.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions out there? Okay.
It looks like that's all the questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Again, head over to allaboutthedata.co/SQL for beginners for access, and be sure to use the webinar 10 as the coupon code to save 10% this weekend. If that's it, I think we can wrap it here, Jay.
Thank you, Brian.